I think we need to actually like rethink how we do accounting from the ground up. I think now that we have this like third ledger, this like double entry bookkeeping plus this third open ledger, we have to now start thinking about how we can build accounting from scratch that like just like literally connects to the time chain or connects to your node and is able to pull the information and do its accounting right there and then. From that whole suite of merchant tools, the natural kind of flow then is to start offering things like POS, event tickets, subscription models, donation pages, like e-commerce stores. But I think the accounting side of it, the tax side of it, the capital gains tax, all of these different things that people automatically just think like, oh wow, that's going to be a nightmare to deal with all that stuff. I don't want to have to deal with that. Every little SAT that comes in, everything that comes in has to be like accounted for, and the capital gains tax, all this kind of stuff. I think that scares a lot of people off as well. With Bitcoin, it is a race to the bottom, it's to zero. And so what you're incentivized to do is, instead of becoming a rent seeker, you actually have to provide some real value and real service to users.
John is the CEO and founder of Zaprite, an invoicing platform that makes it easy for anyone to get paid in Bitcoin. In our conversation, we discussed exactly how Zaprite's product works today. We discussed the challenges limiting Bitcoin adoption and limiting people getting paid in Bitcoin today. And we also discussed what people really care about between fees and speed and stability when it comes to payments. I've also added John to today's show splits, so if you enjoy this episode and if you learn something new, the best way you can support this show is by sending in sats over the Lightning Network. You can use any Podcasting 2.0 app, but Fountain is my favorite one to use if you are new to Podcasting 2.0. Quick shout out, today's show is sponsored by Voltage. Voltage is the industry standard and next generation provider of Lightning Network infrastructure. Today's show is also sponsored by Zebedee, and Zebedee is your portal into the world of Bitcoin gaming. We'll have more from Voltage and Zebedee later in the show. John, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me today, and I'm excited to chat all about Zaprite and what you're building. Before we get into it though, let's start with your background, history in Bitcoin, and why you decided to build Zaprite.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on, Kevin. Appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here. So my story started in Bitcoin started in 2013, actually. I really wish I could remember what article I read that got me interested in Bitcoin. But it was right before the kind of Mt. Gox run up. I think it was like the middle of 2013, something like that. That's when I first got interested in it, downloaded a node, ran a node, started buying a little bit of Bitcoin, self-custody, all that kind of stuff. Then kind of forgot about it after a while. Then it wasn't until 2016 I started to get back into it. Got sucked into the whole 2017 ICO craziness. And then came out the other side of that in 2018 as a hardened Bitcoin maxi. And that's when I really started to look into Bitcoin for what it was, like the money aspect of it. And I tried to figure out what exactly I could do to get involved in Bitcoin. Like I wasn't, a developer, like a full stack developer or anything. Like I couldn't, or a backend engineer, so I couldn't, review code or any of that kind of stuff. But I was really interested in getting involved in some way. And eventually, I was a customer of Bull Bitcoins in Canada, where I was living at the time. And I'd been using their platform, and as a designer, graphic designer, like web designer, I just thought like their front end could be a lot better. And so I spent a weekend doing up a mock-up for UI UX to improve their Bitcoin outlet store as it was at the time. And sent it to Francis and said like, hey, love your product, but here's like how you can make it look way better. And he loved that, and he hired me to do work for Bull Bitcoin. And so that's how I actually got my break into Bitcoin. And that's really then what prompted me to start thinking about Zaprite, was because I needed a tool then to actually invoice properly for Bitcoin. Because I was actually billing in Bitcoin for my time to Bull Bitcoin, or at least they were paying me in Bitcoin. And I was trying to run a Casa node. I was trying to run BTC Pay server from that at home in my living room, trying to expose those URLs to make the invoices public and things like that. And it was just kind of a mess, even for somebody like, tech literate like myself. And so always in the back of my mind, there was this idea that I should build, an invoicing platform. And so, when all the kind of COVID madness hit in in 2020, I thought, all right, now this is my time. I should roll out this idea I've been thinking of. And so I started kind of just playing around with this like side hobby project like called Zaprite. And that was kind of the intro to how I went from getting into Bitcoin to eventually like building a Bitcoin product.
Very cool. So this was your own, you're scratching your own itch here. This is you had a problem as a contractor, and this was the solution to that problem. I want to understand now, like, how far does the scope of Zaprite extend beyond like invoicing for contractors, right? Because that was like a foot in the door. Where do you go from here? What's the vision for the company?
Yeah, exactly. So it was scratching an itch very much at the start for myself, and it was a very niche product for a niche market, which is still kind of a niche market, I guess. But it was just the invoicing aspect of it. Very simple, generate an invoice just like any other invoicing tool that was available. But we would then go and get the live Bitcoin price, and pull your Bitcoin address and generate the QR code and give you the hosted payment page that was needed. So very simple, but like served a very basic need. And now I think there's a great opportunity to expand that out. So there's a couple of different like things that Zaprite's going to do. First and foremost, it's going to concentrate on just building the tools that allow like individuals, whether you're like a freelancer, a contractor, or a small business, to actually start accepting Bitcoin. And that's really the core aspect, is just trying to make it easier for people to migrate over to a Bitcoin standard, either completely or like slowly at the start, right? Maybe you only 1 in 10 invoices maybe go out to Bitcoin payment, to Bitcoin payers or things like that. So you can start slow and then eventually like build up and be fully on a Bitcoin standard. And so the way we facilitate that at the moment is we obviously offer the Bitcoin invoicing aspect that's been there since the MVP. But now I've added in, for example, Stripe credit card payments. So now you can actually connect your own Stripe account. And so you can offer that dual option to payers. They'll when they see your hosted invoice on Zaprite, it'll show them the option of credit card or Bitcoin. And the next logical step on that then is, okay, well, now we can actually offer them a discount. So we can try and incentivize them to pay in Bitcoin. So we can have a little sticker or a badge that says like, 5% off or 10% off if you pay in Bitcoin. And that might get people curious, be like, oh, well, like, where can I get some Bitcoin? I want 10% off this invoice. And then maybe you can have like, revenue share models or lead generation or signups to other exchanges where people can go and buy the Bitcoin. And then through APIs, we can get our invoice paid automatically through the sign up process. So there's all things like that where, we can incentivize not just the merchants to onboard to Zaprite to start earning Bitcoin, but we can actually incentivize the payers on the other side to start paying as well. So from that whole suite of merchant tools, the natural kind of flow then is to start offering things like POS, event tickets, subscription models, donation pages, like e-commerce stores, things like that, widgets that you can just add to like, a blog. If you want to take a donation, we'll just give you a little JavaScript snippet or button you can drop on your site. And then all of that just connects back over to a custom checkout page that you can build on Zaprite. So essentially what we're going to do is we're just going to offer a hosted branded checkout page, which connects to any wallet that you want to connect it to, right? Whether it's fully self-custodial, whether it's your node running at home, like an Umbrel or Start9 or something, you can do the fully self-custodial route. Or you can connect your Strike account if you want to connect the Strike account, and we'll just generate through the Strike API a QR code. So now all your payments go directly into your Strike account. So whatever it is you're comfortable with doing, we'll just provide all these amazing fluid UI UX wrappers for the tools that allow you to earn and manage your Bitcoin as a small business or a contractor.
Interesting. So is it right then to think like the constraint here for Zaprite's business is going to be on finding new people that want to earn Bitcoin rather than the people wanting to pay, right? Like if you can get the earners, and you can give the earners the tools to then accept payments in, through a credit card or through Bitcoin or whatever, like all the different methods you mentioned, then anyone should be able to pay, right? And they'd have no problem making that payment. Is that the idea, that like first you have to get the earners on board?
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely focused first and foremost on the earners. Like I mentioned, that's where the product came from, scratching my own itch as an earner. I needed that tool. And I think it's a powerful market to try and tap into because, one of the things, if you kind of, you know, abstract the money aspect out of Bitcoin for the moment and just concentrate on what Bitcoin is fundamentally, what it does to people when they get interested in it and they understand it is it gives them this kind of idea of high and low time preference. And you know, as you well know, like as Bitcoiners, we all start to think differently, and we start to have this brighter hope for the future, and we want to become better people, and we want to have like a much lower time preference. So we start to look after our finances, our savings, our health, our education, all of these things. And I think, you know, that's something that I wish that, you know, was more focused on, or people knew first and foremost before the kind of like number go up stuff. That's all great and it sucks the people in. But I think if a lot of people knew like how it fundamentally changes you for the better as a person, it would be, you know, a really good selling point as well. And I think earning like accelerates that. I think if you can get somebody to concentrate on the earning side of it first, it really kind of focuses them in on that side of Bitcoin. Because what happens is if you're earning, particularly if you're earning 100% of your income on Bitcoin, you now have to think really hard about what you're spending those sats on, right? So you just become a better manager of your money, a better manager of your time. You start to think a lot more about, you know, the value of different things that you spend money on. And so I think, you know, there's a fundamental difference between people earning Bitcoin and people just buying it on an exchange with whatever leftover cash they have that month after paying their bills, right? That's kind of, you know, that's great. You should encourage people to do that for sure. But that's kind of thought of as like, that's the savings, right? It's like I've paid all my bills. Now I'm like, whatever I have left over, I'm going to save it in Bitcoin instead of leaving it in the bank. Like, okay, great. But if you're actually earning it right from the start and all your bills have to be paid in Bitcoin as well, which is not easy right now, granted, but it definitely changes you to think a little bit differently about, like, you know, you have all of those low time preference things start to kick in, and you just start thinking about your money and managing your money a lot better, which brings you back to why Bitcoin is fundamentally like better money than anything else that exists. So I think the earning side of it, yeah, for sure, is like a really critical aspect of trying to get people onboarded.
So, okay, that's interesting. If earning then is the catalyst that gets people to understand the low time preference ideas in Bitcoin, how do you get people to start earning? Like, how do you kickstart the earning process so that they can then kickstart the low time preference?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you know, this is something that I guess all kind of Bitcoin companies struggle with, is trying to onboard users, particularly like traditional users that are, you know, using tools in the fiat world, trying to convince them to move over to start using Bitcoin tools. That's definitely like one of the hardest aspects of it, is trying to do that. And I think one of the biggest roadblocks, I think, like the reason why it's one of the harder things is, I mean, there's a lot of people maybe don't understand Bitcoin first and foremost, and that kind of like scares them a little bit as well. But I think the accounting side of it, the tax side of it, the capital gains tax, all of these different things that people automatically just think like, oh wow, that's going to be a nightmare to deal with all that stuff. I don't want to have to deal with that. Every little sat that comes in, everything that comes in has to be like accounted for, and a capital gains tax, all this kind of stuff. I think that scares a lot of people off as well. So, I mean, one of the aspects which you kind of touched on before from the Zaprite viewpoint is the larger kind of, you know, long-term play with Zaprite is, once we have all these merchant tools in place where we're onboarding people in to be able to use their POS or the e-commerce or ticket sales, whatever it might be that they're doing, or invoicing, we can then start to build an accounting layer on top of that. And we can actually build tools that allow people to very easily see, okay, this is how much money I took in this month. This was the USD or whatever the fiat currency is you're using. This was the cost basis of it all. This is any like unrealized capital gains or losses that I have right now in my business within my Zaprite dashboard. I can see everything, and it makes it like super easy to manage your Bitcoin inflows and outflows as a business. So, you know, I think to answer that question about like how do you get people into that mindset of like earning, is I think fundamentally we have to just build better tools that solve a lot of the problems that they have. Like I said, particularly around the accounting, tax reporting, all that kind of aspect. And that's, you know, that's going to be a big part of Zaprite's roadmap as well in the future, is building this accounting system and this reporting system on top of the merchant tool so that you actually can feel comfortable onboarding yourself or your business, knowing that you'll have this information at your fingertips when you need it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's something that's going to get even more complicated and more necessary in the Lightning ecosystem. With all the different ways you can earn on Lightning, all of a sudden, like, you know, in a lot of cases, these are very, very small transaction amounts, but you start adding them up and eventually things get to, you know, like right now, I think I'm on this through the show, through Stacker News, through things like that. Like I'm earning hundreds of thousands of sats a month. And you know that's enough of an amount that you gotta be able to account for this stuff. You gotta be able to report it, right? Like it might be different if you were earning 10 cents one time and you just kind of like, you know, write it off, whatever. But if you're actually earning money, it's like you gotta be able to account for that. And I think the proliferation of tools that we're seeing now allowing people to earn is going to lead to this requirement for tools that help people understand how they're earning and help people report on their earnings. So I'm really excited about this. I think there's a massive opportunity there because I just look at the number of transactions that I have on a daily basis, and I'm like, oh man, this is going to be. I got to manually go through every app. Luckily, it has like, you know, CSV exports and things like that, but I got to manually go through each one and do that one by one to keep track of these things. And it seems like that's going to be a new use case that, you know, people are going to need, you know, accounting software for.
Absolutely, yeah. I think 100%. You know, if we keep heading in the direction we are, and the direction we all think we're going, where we're all going to be on a Bitcoin standard at some point, inevitably in the future, and we're all starting to earn more, either through tools like Zaprite or even like Stacker News or like Fountain or wherever you're like getting stats streamed in, you've got to have, you know, better tools to be able to manage that. Just at a very basic level, to be able to like see this flow of sats coming in and being able to calculate, you know. Right now, unfortunately, we need to be able to calculate the capital gain on that when Bitcoin becomes like, you know, digital or becomes like legal tender. We won't have to do that. But unfortunately, we're going to have this period of time in between. We don't know how long that's going to last. But certainly, if you're earning significant amounts of money, you have to account for it. Now, not just from the tax standpoint of it, like nobody likes paying taxes, but you know, you don't want to get on the wrong side of the tax collector. But even just from a fundamental business perspective, you just need to know how your business is operating. So even if we're operating on a fiat standard or a gold standard or a Bitcoin standard or whatever it might be, you still need basic accounting tools to figure out, you know, how your business is operating, whether you're running a healthy business or not. And one of the things with Bitcoin, I think we have, and Darren Feinstein talks about this quite a bit as well, and a few others, is, you know, we have this 700-year-old double entry accounting system. And, you know, I don't think it's going to be enough where tools like, say, QuickBooks can just like bolt in, say, BTC as another ticker symbol into their, you know, list of currencies and like away they go. I think we need to actually like rethink how we do accounting from the ground up. I think now that we have this like third ledger, this like double entry bookkeeping plus this third open ledger, we have to now start thinking about how we can build accounting from scratch that like just like literally connects to the time chain or connects to your node and is able to pull the information and do its accounting right there and then. You know, there's so much information on Lightning nodes and on chain that, you know, you need to approach it from a different angle. You need to be able to like look at inputs, look at outputs, look at like, you know, taproot, DLCs, multisig, all this kind of stuff. You need to be able to parse these transactions, split out fees, figure out where this money is gone into different accounts and have different accounts for each type. And then, of course, you got stuff like what Nifty Nye is doing with, you know, the Bookkeeper plugin on top of Core Lightning, which does like basic bookkeeping features by just running this plugin on top, and it actually just talks to your node and extracts the information. So I think we need all these, you know, tools they're just thought of from a different viewpoint to incorporate, you know, a Bitcoin standard into. So what I'm really interested in doing, because I think you're right, I think this space over the next, like certainly over the next like decade, and longer, it's going to be a huge space, because I think we need to start building tools that think about it from like I said, right from scratch, like build it from scratch and think about these tools from a Bitcoin only perspective, and temporarily like bolt in the fiat rails just for as much time as we need it, and then yank them back out again when we don't need them. I don't think we should be doing this like, like I said, plug BTC into QuickBooks and like that's okay for now, and then we'll deal with it later. So I think there's a huge opportunity to build systems that actually account for like Sats flow and things like that from things like Fountain and Stacker News and Lightning nodes that are doing liquidity and things like that. It's going to be a huge space, I think, over the next decade.
Yeah, so this is very much a Bitcoin native approach to invoicing and accounting software.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about the trade-offs people care about when they're earning Bitcoin, or earning any money for that matter, I think of a few that come to mind. Speed being one of them, fees being one of them, short-term price stability is another one. What do you think people care most about? What have you learned from the users you have now? Where do you think that's headed? Do you think, and I'm trying to get an idea for like where these transactions are going to be taking place over time. Is this going to be happening on Bitcoin's main chain? Is this going to be happening on a side chain like Liquid? Is this going to be happening on Lightning? And I think those different factors, the answer depends on what people prefer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a very tough question to answer, because things are evolving so fast, right? Like, I mean, we look how fast the Lightning Network is developing now. We're like well over 4,000 Bitcoin on the Lightning Network. Like, you're able to accept bigger and bigger payments, whereas before it was thought of as just like really small payments, right? Like, you know, I went out to dinner last night here in Austin with a whole bunch of Bitcoiners, and I paid a bill that was like $150 over Lightning. So, that was no problem, just went through straight away. So we got to start thinking about this. So there's a couple of different answers to that question. So I guess I'll kind of back up and talk about the things that customers are concerned about. So you got a couple of different types of customers. I mean, you've got people that are based in, the Western world, a lot of like North American users that are using Zaprite. And they're Bitcoiners, so they're familiar with both on-chain and Lightning. So their main concerns are just having a product that works. So like all these different features. So like a lot of the feedback I'm getting right now is about like feature sets and tweaks and different UI updates. And oh, hey, I noticed when I'm adding a task to the project management, like can you have this extra field where I add it in? Or when I import my contacts, I'd like to be able to give them a company name, not just a person name, and I'd like to be able to put a reference field in there as well. So all these little different things that they just want to be able to use the product in like a much smoother way. And I guess that ties into then like, a lot of, certainly if you're earning, sending out invoices for $10,000, $20,000, and we've seen invoices in Zaprite that are going out for like $30,000 plus. So if you're invoicing that type of money, you're going to do that on chain right now, right? Now there may come a time in the future where you can do that on Lightning. Then we've also got the Fedimint thing. If this takes off and people start using like Fedimint tokens, we're going to have to like think about that aspect of it as well. I've got Liquid in there as well, where people can take in LBTC, and they can maybe do Tether on that as well if I start thinking about how stable coins might be integrated. And this is something that I am thinking about, because I've been talking to a few people over the last couple of months who have given me like these very different use cases for how stable coins would fit into the mix. Some people are, well, we want to use Zaprite. We're based in Africa or Central South America, and we don't want like the volatility of Bitcoin right now, but we want to where we don't have access to the right banking tools, so we want a stable coin. And then you've got that same kind of like use case, but from the other side, where you have companies and individuals in North America who want to hire contractors who are based in these places, and they want to be able to pay them in Bitcoin and have that converted to stablecoin on the other side, because that's what these people are wanting. So there is the kind of opposite use case of that as well, which is being discussed, and people have like requested that. So there's a lot of different moving parts and a lot of different aspects to it, which I think like could be solved. Obviously, like, we haven't got there yet with Zaprite, but there's so many different areas that we can think of integrating, and obviously they'll just keep expanding, like I said, with things like Fedimint coming in. Okay, now we got to deal with like tokens, and how does that work, because you're going to have different tokens issued from different Fedimints. Like it's an evolving industry for sure, but I think it's an exciting opportunity to integrate a lot of these different things, and think about very unique use cases that may come up in the future, or stuff that we can't even imagine will come up in the future. But I think that because we have some of the greatest people working in this space, that we have a huge opportunity to very quickly iterate through all of this stuff and provide some real value for users.
Mm-hmm. So do you know today what the mix is between like people paying in Bitcoin versus, I think people can pay on credit card right now, right?
Yeah, so I've added in the Stripe credit card functionality in there. I don't have stats on that yet, because it's only been in there about a month, and I haven't been able to like pull out the stats on it yet. But that would certainly be an interesting thing to see. My gut tells me that it's not going to be huge, at least right now in the first month, because I would imagine that all the users that have signed on to Zaprite so far have done so because they're interested in the Bitcoin earning side of it. Whereas I think the Stripe credit card aspect is more just a tool for me to be able to like hopefully reach out to that bigger market and attract those people in who are like, well, I already use this other invoicing tool over here. I don't want to use two tools, like one to invoice people in Bitcoin and another my standard one I'm using. And so for me, integrating Stripe in there was just another way where I can say, well, hey, now you can still offer both to your users. Like, come on over to Zaprite, like you can give them the choice. And I think having Stripe in there as well, I mean, like, to be perfectly honest, I kind of struggled with that decision of adding Stripe in, because like I said, I'm just like hardcore Bitcoin maxi, and I didn't really want to build a tool that makes it easier for people to move fiat around. And so I resisted putting credit card payments in there for quite a while. And the thing that changed my mind eventually was OpenNode announcing that they're testing a plugin that connects to Stripe that allows you to automatically convert all of your Stripe credit card payments into Bitcoin. And I think that's like, pretty huge. So if you have an OpenNode account and a Stripe account, you can just connect them, and every single Stripe payment that comes in, Stripe will just plug into OpenNode and send it over, and OpenNode will convert it to Bitcoin. So that's kind of similar to say what like IBEX or any of these like POS systems are doing right now, where you can take in Bitcoin and they'll convert it to USD on the other side. So you're just seeing this integration between Stripe and OpenNode, which allows the opposite. You can now get paid in fiat and have it auto convert to Bitcoin on the other end. So I think that's pretty cool, and I think there will be more and more tools like that on both sides of the argument, so from the merchant side and the user side. And we'll see a lot more of that like kind of streamlined transfer between like fiat and Bitcoin, particularly with things like Strike and Cash App. You can scan a regular Lightning QR code now with a Strike app, and it can pull out your dollars and send over the Lightning Network. Like, that's pretty cool, right? So you can imagine that spreading out to every other app that's out there, and all of a sudden now we have this like really like seamless interoperability between fiat and Bitcoin rails. And so now you can start to offer all these tools that just give people like complete freedom about what they want to do, and just manage it on both sides.
Yeah, that seems really important, to be able to unlock both sides without having to agree on we're both going to transact in Bitcoin or we're both going to transact in dollars. If the earner wants to receive Bitcoin and the payer wants to send dollars, it's fine. It doesn't matter, because we have the seamless bridge now.
Yeah.
Have you thought through any of the like interesting applications that might come about at a time when we have seamless bridges between USD and Bitcoin? We have a couple of them right now in select markets. You mentioned Strike and a couple others, but like I get the sense this is not a global thing right now. It's hard to still, seamlessly move between currencies as you pay people or as you receive money. What are some of the interesting applications that could appear at a time when anyone in the world, anywhere, can instantly switch between Bitcoin or dollars when they send or receive money?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I wish I had a straight off answer off the top of my head, but I think pretty much the short answer is everything is game. Everything is game. I think everything has to be rebuilt on this new standard. So pretty much take any existing kind of fiat app that is like exists right now, and we need to build that with Lightning Rails integrated, right? Like that's just there's going to be so many things that we can like simply need to be rebuilt. Like take Zaprite for example. It was just invoicing. Okay, now we need to rebuild that, add in Lightning. So that's like really simple example. But in terms of just converting everything over, I think there's an opportunity for so many businesses to start up that just take these existing companies and just integrate them on a fully native Bitcoin Lightning standard. In terms of like what future businesses that could come up, I mean, man, I can't even think, but like the sky's the limit on that one. I don't know if you have any off the top of your head, but there's so many things that we could think of because traditional markets, everything tends to be like siloed, right? You've got these Jack Mallers talks about this a lot, where Cash App users can't send money to like Strike users, to Venmo users, like to pay, like it's not interoperable. They all have these like closed systems. I mean, now I guess you can with some of them with Lightning, where you're just scanning like QR codes. But I think that's where the excitement comes in, is that because everybody is fundamentally on this open monetary network, that's where we can start to see all these like crazy innovations where like you can just, make a payment like somewhere and it just like hops between different products and you get this like amazing value on the other side, like without even thinking about it, because you've been able to, seamlessly integrate all these different services. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. So I think that's like there's a lot of things that could be built on that side of it when we get everybody onto this standard monetary network.
Yeah, I mean it's really challenging to think about what some of these new business models are going to be, or what some of these use cases are going to be. Even still, for the last 10, 15 years in the internet's evolution, people have had a really, really hard time even predicting a year or two into the future. Like, a year before Snapchat comes out, no one was waiting. No one was going, oh, we're really dying for Snapchat to exist. Like someone's going to build it.
Yeah.
I don't think that was true. And a year before Uber came out, no one was going like, oh, we're dying for Uber. We need Uber. I think it's
the same with
It happens super quickly. Like by the time you realize you need it, it's there. There's not a big lag period of 5-10 years into the future often. But I think one way that I've started to think about how to predict some of these things, or how, where opportunities might arise, is just by looking at the apps on my phone today and looking at every single one of them as a business, mm-hmm. and say like, how does this business make money? And where do payments come from? Where do they go to? Who's left holding the bag? Who doesn't get any of the payments? Are there different ways in which seamless money transfers could change the relationship between the participants in that particular business? And you can go through all the 50 or 100 apps you got on your phone and probably find a bunch of businesses where that relationship is going to change. One example for a podcasting example is you look at Spotify, and you think Spotify is earning all this money on ads. Listeners get none of it. YouTube, listeners get none of it, or viewers get none of it. Yeah. We can change that relationship. We have the tool to allow the viewers and the listeners and the people who are actually making the platform valuable, we have a tool to reward them. And so, that's one example. There's going to be a ton of them, though. It's anywhere that we had to find workarounds because we didn't have an ideal payment system. I think like now we do have this ideal payment system. Well, what do we unlock? We unlock all those things that we couldn't build before because the things that were constrained by the payment system itself. And I think if YouTube had existed today or was built today, and we had a Lightning integration from the get-go, maybe they would have leveraged that. Maybe they would have used that to bootstrap an audience because, hey, who doesn't want to be paid for contributing to this platform, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think you hit the nail on the head there, and that kind of goes back to what I'd mentioned before about every single business that exists now is ripe for disruption because it needs to be first and foremost like transferred over to the Lightning Network. And we see a perfect example of that with Keon and Stacker News, right? I know you're a big fan of Stacker News. It's the same thing. It's like, right, well, I mean, I'm going to contribute value to this business, to this forum by bringing my thoughts, my ideas, and sharing my comments and interacting with the community there. And I'm going to get value back because now I can earn sats. And that wouldn't have been possible before, right? Because you can't really do that on with credit cards or with anything else, right? So there's this like great incentive there to do things like that. And I think we're going to see like a lot more of that. The value for value like side of it is huge. Like I think there's stuff there that we probably haven't even considered yet, right? The whole like reward side of things and like earning sats back, which I guess kind of like ties into the earning side of it as well, is that you can actually start using more tools now that value your time. Whatever it is that you're doing, like you can participate in this like open market where you're actually getting something back in reward for your time or your thoughts or your like education, whatever it is that you're putting into it. So yeah, I think it's really exciting to kind of like try and like think about what's gonna come down the line with that. But I think you're right, like just looking at your phone and looking at all the apps, it's like, okay, well, like all of this stuff needs to be updated to run on Lightning for sure. And then that opens up like a whole world of possibilities.
I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Voltage. Voltage is the industry standard for Lightning Network infrastructure. Creating layer 2 applications and services on top of Bitcoin starts with Voltage, where you can spin up nodes, get access to liquidity, optimize your node, and much more. Voltage is leading the way as the next generation provider of Lightning Network infrastructure. And if you want to get a free trial and start using Voltage today, you can do so at voltage.cloud. And now with new opportunities also come new challenges and problems that need to be addressed. One of the problems that I've started to notice is that, I think I would call myself a power user of Lightning apps, where I have a lot of them on the go. I've tried a bunch of different apps. I've earned a little bit here and there on a bunch of different platforms. And I am now recognizing that I have like a handful of different wallets that all have small balances, that are all going to be manually, at some point I decide to move them all to one wallet or to, do something with those funds. And I have to figure out like what to do with all the different wallets, and do I need to have 5 or 10 of them? Can I just do it all in one? I'd love for someone to build that solution to, basically let me see all of my transactions in a single place. And I wonder where this, how this app will be built and where it will live. Is this something that has to come from like a Lightning node, where like that might be one place where you could aggregate all these transactions, and have Stacker News send funds directly to my Lightning node, have Fountain send funds directly to my Lightning node. I wonder, is there a custodial way to build this as well? What do you think the solution is for this like really spread out ecosystem of earning right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of something that Zaprite is trying to like solve, right? I mean, the long-term goal, to kind of go back on the accounting aspect of it that I've been thinking about, like for a very long time, I've tried to think about this problem in terms of, okay, well, I started Zaprite because I needed to earn myself. I was earning Bitcoin and I need to send out an invoice. Okay, great. Now I've got that. Then I moved down to Austin and I spin it up as a proper business, a startup, and I start raising money. And I'm like, okay, well, now I have a proper business with a corporate account. I'm paying contractors and developers in Bitcoin. I'm trying to run Zaprite as a 100% Bitcoin only company. So I'm paying for my hosting in Bitcoin. I'm paying everything I possibly can. But I do have like credit cards and other things as well. And so I have like different accounts that go out for different things. I got mobile wallets, I got desktop wallets, I got hardware wallets, I got different things that are like managing Zaprite's, Bitcoin treasury. And so, very early on, I started to think, okay, now like we need better like accounting tools and money management tools for companies that are going to move on to a Bitcoin standard. And so this ties into, the long-term goal I was mentioning earlier about having this, this all-in-one accounting tool built on top of all these merchant services tools that we're offering. So not only will you get access to, like I said, your POS, your invoicing, donation pages, checkout forms, all this kind of stuff, but we'll have this accounting layer on top of it. And the idea is that you can plug whatever wallet you want into that. So if you've got, 3 different phone wallets and like 2 different desktop wallets, and you're using Strike as well, and now you're using like, some other like custody, third-party custody, and maybe you've got an exchange as well where you buy and sell your Bitcoin to be able to like, keep your treasury topped up. The idea is that you'll plug all these in, and then Zaprite can offer a dashboard that shows you like, hey, you've got like 12 different like wallets connected. And this one is tagged for invoices, this one is tagged for like event tickets, this one is tagged for spending, like this one's tagged for whatever. And then we can start to aggregate all of that and then provide all the overall reporting and charts and everything that shows you like, this is your overall picture of everything that you're doing like for all of those wallets together. And that would be, more from a business perspective. If you're running a business, you might have like a hot wallet, like you're running Wasabi or something. You got a hot wallet, you got some hardware wallets, you got some exchange accounts, and you got some phone wallet for day-to-day spending. So that would allow you to more easily manage all your business stuff. On the personal side of that as well, I think, maybe Zaprite can solve this in the future as well. But particularly from a personal side of it, because I think you're right. Like, as somebody like yourself, like a Lightning Power user, you've got this Sats flow coming in from so many different places. So even on a personal basis, we need to be able to just account for all that, or at least be able to just see an overall picture of like, well, how much did I earn last month, right? I've got these 4, 5, 6 different wallets. Do I got to go into all of them? I can check through the dates and see what came in when, and try and export it into a spreadsheet. And so that's, I think, something that Zaprite could like solve eventually. Is what we hope to solve, is that just make all of that easier, where you just connect to a node, connect to a wallet, like whatever it might be, and we'll be able to like run all those reports for you and give you this like really quick snapshot of your Bitcoin finances, basically, all while trying to do it in the most like like non-custodial, like privacy preserving way, which I know is like difficult when people are giving you expobs and things like that and access to phone wallets. Like it's very hard to do, but hopefully we can, figure out the best way to do all of that in a way that users will be comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. I saw on the site on Zaprite, you guys plan to be KYC free forever. What are the blockers there that might get in the way? What are the constraints you have to work within now? Because it seems like that's going to be become a target or like a hot spot for people to try and get access to this kind of information if you're operating like an invoice or accounting service.
Yeah, exactly. Right now we're KYC free, we're non-custodial. If you want to sign up for Zaprite, all you need to do is like put in an email address, and then you've got access. We just use passwordless login, so we'll send you a magic link. You get access to the site. You can start sending invoices right away. And because we ask you to connect your own wallet, where it's manually pasting in a Bitcoin address or connecting your own like Umbrel or MyNode, you can do that over LNbits or LND. And so what we do, even with like a third party like account like Strike, we're just using API connectors to basically facilitate those peer-to-peer payments. So we step out of it. We're not part of it at all, which is how we can remain like KYC free. Now that's my end goal, is to like always remain that way, because that's just like the way I am. I'm just like adamant that KYC is the illicit activity, right? So you know, whatever may happen, like Zaprite may offer, say something like payroll in the future, where we might have to do KYC because we're actually taking in large amounts of money from a corporation and distributing out to users. Again, there's like different legal aspects of that. Like, do we use KeySend? Do we use Lightning addresses? Do we split it out and not even take custody of it all? And then you're kind of, you're in a gray area of, what they're going to do. And so to answer your question, yes, you're very much like at the mercy of the rule makers when it comes to that. Right now, like I said, Zaprite doesn't. We don't need a money transmitter license because we're not transmitting money. All I'm doing is generating a QR code for somebody to pay somebody else. But at any stage, like the government could step in and say, well, you're facilitating payments, so like now we're going to write a new law that says like you have to KYC all your users, right? So as much as I want to stay KYC as much as I can, there may be a time where like it has to be done. I don't even know if I will want to do it at that stage, or hopefully we'll be able to route around it or do other stuff. But it's certainly a goal to stay KYC free as long as possible. And on that front, like I want to start offering, as many privacy focused options for users as possible. So one thing, like I mentioned before, for example, we require an email address for users to log in right now. And the reason I have that, and I haven't put something like LNURL auth, is because we need the email addresses to be able to send out notification emails when you're sending invoices to users, or you're like receiving notifications yourself when your invoices are being paid. But in the future, what we can do now, particularly with tools like Nostr coming out, is we can actually like scrap the email, or at least have the LNURL auth option on there as well. So now you can actually like sign in, anonymously, and you can just provide a Nostr public key, and then we'll run a relay, and we'll just send out notification of all these payments to your own pub key. So there's tools like that where we can actually start to like minimize our exposure to people's data, and to be having to store data, and to have to use third party like email services like SendGrid, which we're using at the moment to send the emails. So if we can remove them from the step and give people more of these privacy options, as well as things like offering like an Umbrel app or a Start9 app that you can run on your embassy, where it's just Zaprite. You just like pull it out, download it, and now you've got your own internal like Postgres database or something that's running your own version of Zaprite right off your own node. That's something that we'll definitely offer in the future as well. So I think there's a lot of ways that I'd like to keep Zaprite KYC free, at least for those people who maybe want to go the extra mile and take the extra step to actually do that. Like I said, it may come to a point where we're all forced to do KYC no matter what it is we're doing. In which case, I think there will definitely be an open source version of Zaprite where you can just take it and run it on your node and you're good to go.
Yeah. It's really interesting right now. It seems like you're in a place with a lot of uncertainty. Like your business specifically, you have capital gains stuff that we're not sure if Bitcoin becomes legal tender, when that might happen, what the ramifications will be. There's the KYC issues, like we're not sure what the regulations are going to be there. How do you try and operate the business with all this uncertainty and plan for the future? Like how do you extend your time horizon to, planning out 3, 5, 10 years when you have all these question marks coming from regulators today?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because it's a question I ask myself like nearly every day. Is like every feature I'm trying to think up of, or everything I'm trying to do, I'm like, okay, well, like how is this going to affect the future Zaprite, right? Like if I introduce this now, it's just going to like roadblock me like further down the road. And I think like the kind of the quick and easy answer to that is you stay non-custodial as long as possible. As soon as you start custodying of any form at all, you're opening yourself up to regulation down the road. So if you can stay away from the custody aspect as long as possible, it'll make you more nimble. You'll be able to iterate faster. You'll be able to build faster, and hopefully you'll be able to like route around these quasi rules that come in every now and again that say, oh, well, like it's a gray area, we don't know what we're going to do, maybe you have to do this, maybe you have to do that. Well, if you're able to like stay non-custodial, you can just like route around that kind of stuff until you're actually like forced into a position. So, you know, I'm not naive enough to think that it won't happen at some stage down the road where I'll have to deal with it. But right now, the answer is just to stay non-custodial as long as possible and avoid a lot of the regulatory stuff that will come down the road. Because I think most of it, if not all of it, will be around the custodial aspect.
Mm. Now, I want to get into competition and the business model for Zaprite. Right now, I believe it's free for anyone signing up. But over time, I think you plan to offer like tiers and paid plans and stuff like that. What does the business model look like, and how does it compare to what you might find for invoicing and accounting software in the fiat world? Are there any differences for a Bitcoin specific company or a Bitcoin native company?
I mean, there's definitely different steps you can take. You know, there's a whole bunch of different approaches that I can do for the revenue generation side of it. One of them is, you know, what I think most fiat companies tend to do is they offer the service for free or very cheap, and then they just charge a percentage on the volume that runs through. Or sometimes they do both. But certainly, like, I mean, Wave was one of the companies I used as the Toronto company. Just as a Canadian, I knew Wave and I thought, like, all right, these guys are great. It's free to use, and I just pay in the volume that goes through. Funny enough, one of the reasons I actually started like thinking about building Zaprite as well is because I used Wave for years as a contractor myself. And one day, and I used to just put at the bottom of my invoices, like, if you want to pay in Bitcoin, email me and we'll like facilitate it. And then one day, I think, I don't know when it was, maybe 2019, or early 2020, they sent out an email blast to all their users and said, if we catch anybody with anything to do with cryptocurrency or Bitcoin on their invoices, like, we'll ban your account. And so it was at that point I said, all right, I'm not using Wave anymore. I'm building my own service. So that was like one of the kind of aspects that got me to move away from that. But so on the revenue side, there's the straight up volume on percentage on the volume that goes through. That's kind of difficult to do like non-custodially right now. There's a couple of different things you can maybe do on Lightning with, key send, kind of like how like Fountain does the splits, and you can use maybe Lightning addresses and send things out. But again, you're kind of in a gray area of, are you a money transmitter? Are you not a money transmitter? On-chain is certainly even harder to do because there's no way to actually like split a on-chain payment. At least not that I'm aware of, unless you do some kind of like PSBT or some kind of like, contracts where you're maybe batching or something like that. And so, I think the percentage on the volume scales certainly a lot better, particularly if, Zaprite wants to be a global app and we want to focus, our attention on the global user base. A percentage on the volume is a lot fairer to somebody in like, Africa or Central South America, because they probably don't want to pay $20, $30, $40 for a monthly SaaS tier, which somebody in North America might be like happy to pay, right? So it's certainly a more fairer way to scale. But I think what I'm going to start off with is using a SaaS tier model and then keep all the payments completely free, peer-to-peer, non-custodial. And so you're literally just paying for access to Zaprite to provide you with all of these UI UX tools that allow you to do all these things like ticket sales, donation pages, invoicing, POS, all that kind of stuff. And so on that front then, like, we'll start with a free tier. It'll be like always free forever, but maybe you'll be limited to like one invoice a month, or, you can't connect certain services or wherever it might be. And then there might be like $5 or $10 a month, like just a nominal fee where you get to like plug in your own node and do different things, have all different like features and aspects. And maybe you can activate ticket payments if you want that, or activate a POS if you want that. And you might pay like kind of a la carte, pick and choose what your monthly bill is going to be. There's also different revenue share models that we're talking to people like Voltage, where we can actually onboard users directly through Zaprite, and through Voltage's API, we can get them spin up as a customer on Voltage, and then Voltage can like kick back at some of that revenue share of the credits that the user's paying for Voltage. So we can get some like really seamless integration where somebody could like onboard to Zaprite and immediately they just check a box and it says, yeah, this is the tier we want to do, like $30 a month, whatever it might be. And we'll say, okay, well, that includes like a node on voltage. It includes like, 500,000 sats of liquidity or whatever it might be. And we'll actually do that using Voltage Flow API. We can actually have our voltage node just like kick over like channel liquidity to the new user that we spin up through Voltage's API. So in theory, we could have this like amazing seamless like process where a user signs up and within like 2 minutes, they've already got a Lightning node liquidity and are sending out their first invoice. Like I think that's like really cool to have like integrated tools like that. And then we could go all the way up to the enterprise level where, you could charge hundreds per month if you wanted and have like a fully custom, give enterprises their own subdomain. We can give them their own checkout, fully branded, like hosted payment page where they can connect their own wallets. It's all peer to peer. And then there's like zero, fees on the transactions. So you could charge a higher monthly rate on that. So I think that's the kind of pricing model that we'll probably test out initially, which should be able to come pretty soon. The reason I've kind of delayed it right now is I actually want to build out a Bitcoin subscription model. I don't want to use something like Stripe and use a traditional like credit card type subscription model. So I'm actually going to build out a Bitcoin only one where you pay your monthly fees like with Lightning. And so I think, that could even be spun out as a service on its own, right? Because I'm sure there's other like SaaS companies that would want to do subscriptions over Bitcoin. So once we can get that dialed in, we can start testing that out and testing, different like pricing tiers and different pricing structures and see what people are comfortable paying. But I think that's kind of the approach that we're going to go initially.
That's very cool. I like that roadmap. Yeah. I'm wondering about competition now, and I really want to understand more about like the network effect of Zaprite. If you're going to be non-custodial, if you're going to step away and kind of let peers interact with each other, what's the network effect or the moat protecting the business, I guess, of Zaprite? How do you think about that in a peer-to-peer world or a Bitcoin first world?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's definitely ways that other competitors can simply offer the same thing that Zaprite is doing on their own platform, right? So if you take, for example, I mean, the way I kind of describe Zaprite at the moment is like on one end of the scale, you've got, complete self-custody with BTC Pay Server. So you need to like run your own node and you need to be running BTC Pay Server. You need to configure like ports and like URLs and everything. You need to be able to know how to do all that yourself. On the other end of the scale, you got somebody like OpenNode, where they're like fully KYC. They charge like 2% in fees. And then you've got like Zaprite, which sits in the middle, which is no KYC, no fees on the payments, and just charges a SaaS model that gives you like access to whatever it is you want to plug in. So you can either plug in a BTC Pay server if you want to run that at home, or you can pay Voltage to run it for you on one of their nodes, or you can pay like OpenNode if you want to, but you're going to get all these much better tools like OpenNode, like, their invoicing right now is, it's not a scratch on Zaprite. Like we're just like so like way far ahead on that side of it. And I think that's kind of where the moat for Zaprite comes in further down the line is all of these Bitcoin companies, whether they're like, self-custody, self-hosted models, or they're like OpenNode KYC models, whatever it might be, they're all going to provide these amazing different services and they're going to spring up like more and more of them. But I think where Zaprite will shine is that we offer that like seamless ability for somebody to just literally step in and say, well, I don't know how to run a node, or I don't want to sign up for just this one platform over here. I want to be able to plug in, 3, 4, 5, 6 different platforms, and I want all of this like beautiful UI UX and be able to just like, hit buttons and get like launched all these like store URLs and payment checkout pages and donation pages and everything. And so I think that's kind of where we could be able to like carve out a moat is being like this platform that like is a one-stop shop. Like just plug in whatever you want to plug in and we'll just offer like this amazing experience on top of like either natively on top of a node or on top of the time chain, or you can plug in a third-party service and we'll give you like access through their API as well, and we'll just enhance whatever it is that they're offering you.
Right. So just basically building a great user experience in order to kind of like keep customers coming back. And that's something I've heard from a number of startups. I think Strike has that same approach. I think it's going to be necessary for everyone to offer a compelling user experience, because now there's no lock-in. It's a lot harder to lock people in, at least on Bitcoin. When I can move my sats from any wallet to any app to any service, all of a sudden it's just I'm going to choose the best one. I'm going to choose the one that works the best for me. So yeah, I agree. I think that's an interesting way to approach competition, and ultimately I think it leads to a more sustainable and a more valuable ecosystem, one where you're incentivized always to continue enhancing the product. You can't depend on a lock-in, so you have to keep getting better and better and better. And I think maybe that might be one of Bitcoin's, secret kind of like, tools that we can use to accelerate adoption, is that we don't have anything to back into. We don't have anything where we can go, okay, you know what? I've done good enough. Now I'm going to capture everyone and, just extract as much profit as I can. We can't do that. And that might be a catalyst to push the whole space forward, because everyone's going to realize that, and everyone's going to push each other forward faster than they would in a system where you can extract value.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great way to look at it. And it's like, Jack Mallers says this as well, about like it's a race to the bottom in terms of fees. You're not going to be able to like run a Visa or MasterCard model anymore, right? Like you can't just like rent seek and just pull money from people by providing like no real service at all. You're just sitting there forcing people to use your service, and you're taking 3%. Or whatever it is that they get, the rest goes to the merchant banks and stuff like that. But with Bitcoin, it is a race to the bottom, it's to zero. And so what you're incentivized to do is, instead of becoming a rent seeker, you actually have to provide some real value and real service to users, right? Bitcoin by itself is not going to be enough. We have to build the tools on top of that make it easier for people to use it. And that's not saying, there's anything wrong with Bitcoin. It works like fine by, if you just have a very simple wallet scanning QR codes. But the reality is like, the internet works great for sending messages back and forth, but we've built all these cool like chat apps and like email and everything on top of it, because it just makes it so much easier. And I think the same is going to be said of Bitcoin. We just have to build these apps on top that provide absolute real value that people are willing to pay. And as long as you can keep doing that, you can build that stickiness then, that like the users just want to stay with you because they know that you're going to provide whatever it is that they need. And I think that's one of the beauties about this approach that I'm taking with Zaprite as well, is that because we're flexible and because we're not like trying to build our own siloed like API system or something, we're basically just allowing you to plug in whatever it is available that's out there. So that means if somebody else springs up like tomorrow with a brand new service that's amazing, it's like, okay, well, you got an API, right? We'll plug it into Zaprite, like no problem. And I think that's kind of where like a lot of the value will be, is that like users will know that they can just come to Zaprite and they'll pretty much be able to do whatever it is they can do on any other platform, because we'll have plugged into those platforms.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I want to finish the conversation off with a discussion about Austin and the Bitcoin scene down in Austin. Yeah. So I'm making a trip out there soon, and I've been to the city one time, but it was before I was in the Bitcoin scene, and I didn't recognize it was this like Bitcoin hub. But I want to understand more about like what is so special about the city. You're working out of Austin now. You said you're in Canada previously. What attracted you to Austin, and what has kept you there since?
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. Austin is amazing. I've been here, almost a year at this stage. But yeah, originally, I'm Irish originally. Ended up moving to Canada. Was living there for like 12 years. Kind of, got itchy feet, wanted to travel, wanted to do a digital nomad thing for a while, and figured, things are getting crazy in Canada right now. I'll kind of escape for a while. I'll go travel, I'll go back to Ireland, see my family and whatnot. And I had plans to like just kind of pass down through the US and go to like El Salvador to a conference down there and then move back around. But last September, I came down to the US, and of course, Bitcoin Twitter was telling me I need to go to Austin. So I landed in Austin and just never looked back ever since. It was almost like I was just thrown in the deep end. There was so much going on here with, I think there was a Bitcoin or a BitDevs meetup in the old Unchained office, like within 3 days of me coming down. So I just like met amazing people like within 3 days of being here. I think on the second day, actually, I met Kyle Murphy, who runs Pleb Lab along with Keon and Carr, and they were good enough to offer me a desk in their new Bitcoin incubator that they were like trying out this new idea in Austin after running Austin Bitcoin Club for a while. They're like, oh, we have an idea to bring developers together and have this Bitcoin co-working / incubator space. So I got a desk in there, and then, just from that, the contacts I was able to make, just being around other amazing developers, other founders, getting to meet investors, just other amazing people running different events in Austin. It's been absolutely, I can't even describe the amount of value I've got from it by just being here in person within this community. There's so much going on that like you just get like on a huge trajectory like almost immediately. But yeah, I mean, right now we've got, the first Thursday of every month, you've got the Austin Bitcoin Club meetup. You've got second, I think Wednesday, you've got the Lightning Dev meetup. Third Thursday of every month, you have the traditional Bit Devs meetup. And now on the fourth week, I think it's every second month, you've got the Austin Bitcoin Design Club, where we talk about design, UI, UX in terms of Bitcoin. So it's like every week there's something going on. And then apart from that, there's like, different times there'll be different satellite events or different things spun up. There's always people coming through town. There's always events that are going on. It just feels like it's this amazing whirlwind of a Bitcoin community that just things are happening like almost every day. And I think Pleb Lab are about to open a new office as well, which is going to be like a new hub for Bitcoin developers in Austin. It's going to be pretty amazing, co-working space, everything, like to be able to come and work out of there and be surrounded by Bitcoiners like day in, day out as well. But yeah, Austin's it's really special. There's a lot of stuff going on here right now, and it's really exciting to be part of it. It feels like it's kind of ground zero for something amazing that's about to start for the next few decades.
Yeah, it's funny you said that you talked about your first Bit Devs meetup. I think Kian also mentioned that as one of the catalysts that got him to start Stacker News. So, there's a lot of activity clearly, and it's leading to a lot of innovation. What's your sentiment on the overall adoption of Bitcoin within the city? Like, forget just the group of Bitcoiners that congregate there, but how far has that message spread throughout the city to your everyday folks living in Austin?
I think, obviously it's still small, it's still very niche, but it's definitely growing and expanding. There's more and more people becoming aware of it. It's, for example, we went out this morning. There's Michael from Oshi, runs a Bitcoin breakfast every Tuesday morning in a cafe down here in Austin. And so he's onboarded them through Oshi and through Ibex as well. So he's running rewards through Oshi for the breakfast that you buy there. But you can also, if you're not getting one of the rewards, you can just straight up like pay over Lightning because they've got Ibex now for their regular POS. So there's a lot of that happening where, there's a lot of like cafes, float tubs, spas, like different restaurants, like food trucks. Like there's a lot of different places that will actually accept Bitcoin. And it feels like it's just more and more every day. So while it is still small, it's definitely expanding, and there's definitely a buzz about it. And there is a concerted effort by a lot of people to actually onboard businesses, whether it's through Oshi or whether we're actually just talking to people ourselves and we're trying to orange pill Uber drivers as we're going around the city, or every different bar we go to. For example, there was a group of us that went out a couple of weeks ago just to catch some live music one Thursday afternoon. And we ended up just like bar hopping around, following different bands that were advertising live music. And so, after a couple of songs, we'd go up and approach them. We'd get them to download like Moonwallet, and we'd all tip them like, in Bitcoin. And they'd end up with $50 of tips from our group. And then off we'd go to the next bar and we'd orange pill the next musician. So there's things like that happening, and people are very receptive to it. So it's just really cool to see that it's more and more becoming part of daily life. At least people are aware of it, and they're now more comfortable talking about it, and they're willing to listen to you when you try to orange build them.
That's interesting. Is there something specific about Austin that makes it possible to get some of these people to adopt it quickly and get restaurants on board and get musicians on board? Or is this something that can be replicated in any city? Like, do you think that it's something special about the fabric of Austin, or is it something that could, be repeated elsewhere?
I mean, I think it can be repeated elsewhere, but I think one of the things about Austin is what's that phrase, like stay weird or something, or keep Austin weird. It's something. It's like Austin has always been known as this kind of like almost counterculture type like city. So maybe there's something there that kind of allows them to be a bit more open-minded to things like this. Maybe it's just the fact that there's such a high concentration of Bitcoiners that they're able to find the support that they need. Maybe everybody now has a Bitcoiner friend because there's just so many people hanging around Austin. But in terms of kind of be replicated, yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, it's very easy to, any small town or city that you might be in, if you've got a couple of friends that, you're Bitcoiners and you either meet up at each other's house or something, or you go for a beer or whatever and talk Bitcoin, well, maybe start thinking about turning it into an official event. Maybe go to some bar and say like, hey, what's your quietest night? Monday, Tuesday night? All right, well, like, what if I bring 10, 20 Bitcoiners here? Like, will you on board and allow them to pay in Bitcoin? I'll show you how simple it is, right? It could be as easy as that. And of course, they're going to say like, Monday, Tuesday night when they're empty, they'll be like, yeah, absolutely. Like, come on in. Like, we'll take Bitcoin, whatever. So it's you can definitely replicate it. It just like requires the effort to do it. And I think more and more people are more open to the idea nowadays than they ever were, just particularly because of, the climate that we're in with inflation and everything else. I think because Bitcoin is more mainstream now, or at least like, people have heard of it, they kind of know what it is. They're, like I said, they're more willing to have that conversation. So if you can spend a few minutes with them, like, find the bar owner or the food truck owner or whatever when they're quiet, and just talk to them and say, hey, here's a couple of different apps we can get you set up on, and we can have new customers in your door. But definitely reproducible for sure.
I like it. Okay, I want to end this off with a segment I do called the lightning round for a chance to ask some more rapid fire questions. Are you ready for the lightning round?
As ready as I could be, I suppose. Yeah, let's go.
Welcome to the lightning round presented by Zebedee, your portal into the world of Bitcoin gaming. The Zebedee app offers a full-featured Lightning wallet seamlessly integrated with your own personal gamer tag so that you can earn Bitcoin on all of Zebedee's games on mobile and desktop. It's never been more fun to earn Bitcoin, and Zebedee is your key to it all. To claim your personal gamer tag and start earning some Bitcoin of your own, download the Zebedee app today. First question, in the year 2030, will you be processing at Zaprite more payment volume on Bitcoin or on stable coins and credit cards combined, fiat or Bitcoin in dollar volume?
Bitcoin, absolutely.
Interesting. Will Bitcoin be legal tender by the year 2030?
That's a tough one. I'm going to go with no.
Okay. What percentage of payments will be happening on-chain versus Lightning in the year 2030?
Ooh, I don't even know what it is now, but I would say maybe 50-50.
50-50, okay. What will the price of Bitcoin be in 2030?
Oh, man, pick a number, $500,000.
Okay.
Why so bearish?
I like it. Is there anything, I want to get like one lesson that you've learned from your experience in Bitcoin. If you could drill it down to just one, what would that lesson be? What has Bitcoin taught you?
I would have to pull it back to what I was talking about at the start about the low time preference aspect. It's just taught me to become a better version of myself. Health-wise, education-wise, like thinking about the relationships I keep, like how, like what people I spend my time with. everything to do with my finances, educate myself more about the economy, definitely makes me become a much more aware and optimistic and better person than I was, before I knew Bitcoin.
Are there any books that have meaningfully changed your view of the world?
I have to admit, I'm not a big book reader. I get distracted very easily, and I have so many books that I have started, and I'm like 10th of the way in, and then they just sit there with bookmarks in them for years. Um, the Bitcoin standard was great, but yeah, I mean, I think it's just overall for me, it's just about constant consumption of everyday Bitcoin knowledge and economics knowledge from the amazing people on Bitcoin Twitter, which pretty much keeps me fueled up.
Who do you learn most from on Bitcoin Twitter? If you can name an account.
It's got to be Francis Pouliot. The guy is just an absolute legend. He has this knack of like calling things to a T well in advance, and then he just is able to pull those tweets up years later and say, "I told you so," and it's just phenomenal. Like I just kind of pay attention to everything that guy tweets because he's right more often than not.
Interesting. Okay, final question. I think Michael Saylor has this saying that Bitcoin is hope. What are you hopeful that Bitcoin will accomplish?
I'm hopeful that Bitcoin will get us out of this craziness that we're in right now in the world. I think we've been in this 50-year experiment since we came off the gold standard, where society seems to be coming apart at the seams. It's certainly been accelerating the last few years. I'm hopeful that we can get back to the things that really matter in life, which is spending time with people, innovating, coming up with new ideas, discussing new ideas, looking after your health, your well-being, helping people to thrive and save and have fruitful lives. I'm hopeful that Bitcoin will become more adopted so it can fix a lot of those things.
I like it. Thanks for taking the time today. This has been an awesome conversation. I learned a ton. Where can listeners go to learn more about you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been amazing. I'm glad we could have a chat, and looking forward to catching up next week in person. If users want to find me, I'm John JOHN_Zaprite on Twitter, and Zaprite app is the Zaprite account on Twitter. Other than that, just head to zaprite.com, check it out, sign up, start using it, click around. Hit me up with feedback, ideas, suggestions, anything that you've got. I'd love to talk to you and get your experience on it. But that's what it's all about right now, is getting users in the app and finding out what they want.
Awesome. Thanks again, and looking forward to meeting up in Austin soon.
Cheers. Thanks.
All right. In the last 30 days, you guys sent in 184,000 sats. That came in from 121 different supporters. Now, it's been about 8 or 9 days since my last episode, which is why we're using the 30-day numbers. But we've got lots of comments and questions to go through as well. Let's get right into it. First up, we have AG Begin, who says, hands up emoji in response to episode 61 with Nicholas Berthe at Galoy. Othala says, would love to see the next evolution of stable sats without a centralized exchange, but with DLCs or other decentralized markets and exchanges. I think this is coming. We're headed in that direction. We've gone from not having any stable coins to having only centralized stable coins to now, in the last few years, having a lot of variations on decentralized or somewhat decentralized stable coins. The trend is in that direction, and I think it's only a matter of time before we get there. But I appreciate the comment, Athala. I also would love to see further evolutions of this stable sats idea and stable coins more broadly. CryptoBeard says, good work, bro, in response to episode 61. Thank you, CryptoBeard. Rot13 Maxi says, really great episode, and sent in 2,450 sats. Thank you, Rot13 Maxi. Coca says, gracias dinero, in response to episode 1 with Oscar Mary. That was the very first episode. If you're new here, you might want to go all the way back just to listen to that one. It's still one of the more popular episodes on the show. We had an anonymous user send in a boost that says, boost sent from podcastindex.org using Albi. Sent in 2,426 sats to episode 61 with Nicholas Berthe. And we have Renee Aaron, who says LFG with a rocket ship emoji in response to episode 61. Hope you guys all enjoyed that episode. That was great to get it out because it was a breaking story. It had just come out, and got a lot of new listeners from that episode and the Hole Punch episode before, which was also relatively breaking. Overall, thank you for sending in so many sats and comments and messages. I've got another episode to catch up on that's going to be coming out in the next couple of days, and then we've got lots more next week. Talk to you guys soon. Can't wait to see what you guys send in this week.